A newsletter is a common type of publication in the field of design. In Microsoft Publisher, we are going to try our hand at it. But before we do that, we need to learn the parts and purposes of each of the newsletter parts. And there are more than you might think. So we are going to take it from the top right now with the nameplate. So I have an example of this old-fashioned newsletter of sorts, and we can see that the nameplate is going along the top right here. It gives you the title of the newsletter, a picture or some kind of graphic to go along with it, and the title is generally written in a larger size than the rest of it. That goes back to the whole proportional text thing, keeping text a particular size based on its location and importance. So the nameplate always goes on the top. Now there is a section that is not labeled here, and that is called the gutter information. Gutter like the gutter of a house. And that's this little strip going along right here, right underneath the nameplate. It usually contains information about the newsletter, like when it was published, the issue or volume number, and things like that. So that's this long strip right here. It's called the gutter information. G-U-T-T-E-R, gutter information. Just like how the gutter is right underneath the roof of a house, the gutter in a newsletter is right underneath the nameplate. So next, as we go down, we see a headline. A headline is simply the name of a story. Arizona crew wins cup race. If you're reviewing a movie, for example, the name of the movie might simply be what the headline is. We are going to ignore the deck and subhead because we're not going to be including them in our project, and they're not as important as the other things. I know it's kind of weird to just skip two of them, but that's what we're going to do. The body, though, which is, as you can see, is in multiple places, is the text that makes up the article. So basically, the body is the article itself. And we can see it all over. Down rules are vertical lines that separate the columns. So down rules are these lines right here. Here's one, here's another. They go down and they're as straight as rulers. Down rules. Eventually we come to the end of the page, but an article does not always end at the bottom of a page. In that case, we see a little thing that says continued on page 4. It could say continued on page 2, whatever. That just gives us an indication of what page to jump to continue reading that story. And fittingly enough, that line is called the jump line. So it tells the reader what page to continue reading on. It also can tell us what page that the story continued from. So if we go to page 4, at the top it would say continued from page 1. That's important because it's always best to inform the reader what page an article continues on and where it's continuing from. So we would see continued from page 1 on page 4. We'd see a jump line there as well. Moving down, we see another example of a nameplate on a different kind of newsletter. Here's something that wasn't in the first example, though. The masthead. Think of the masthead as the credits of a newsletter. It lists who made it, any person who wrote an article for it. We see graphics and designer, any people who contributed to it, editor, so the credits of a newsletter. So I guess in our case, we'll be the designers. I guess we would fit the graphics and designer category. Because we're not going to be creating any of these articles. We're simply going to be organizing them and making it visually appealing. That's our goal for the newsletter project. Down here we see the footer. So the footer lists simple things like the company's website, for example, and any relevant information, maybe the year, but I think we're just going to do the website, and sometimes the name of the newsletter is repeated in the footer. So that wasn't too bad thus far. There are actually a few more parts that we're going to include in our newsletter project, but I think we got a pretty good start right now. So now you have all the info you need to complete that newsletter labeling activity. Remember to not just write the names, but the descriptions of them as well. You don't have to describe them word for word as I did, but just get the main point across. And that is all for now.